Welcome to Theory of Entertainment. This is day 3 of my 100 days of streaming. And today I'm streaming a bit late here because I am coming back from the theater, the movie theater. So, what was I doing at the movie theater, you might ask? Well, today was a date night. So, my wife and I left the kids at home, went out, got some dinner, and of course, we watched Spider Man Brand New Day. So, today I'm going to give my thoughts on the movie and sort of what I saw, what I enjoyed, sprinkle in some of my wife's thoughts as well. And then ultimately, I'm going to head into the YouTube verse to sort of see what other people are saying about the movie as well, in terms of digesting my own thoughts and kind of get an idea of, yeah, what the vibe is. But before doing any of that, I want to actually give my own thoughts on the movie and how good is Spider Man Brand New Day. So the movie begins with Spidey and a little like montage of, his life after the previous movie, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. For those of you who did or did not watch No Way Home, at the end of that movie, Peter has to make an important decision, which ultimately changes his entire life and switches up the status quo, basically, of Peter Parker in this case. And in this movie, you kind of pick up from that decision, and it's him having to grapple with that decision throughout the film. Now, in the movie, you get a bunch of different cameos from a bunch of different characters in the MCU in particular, and some interesting surprise visits from some characters as well, which I won't get into here because it's a spoiler free, of course. Now, one thing I really liked about the movie is that it does a great job early on of establishing its themes. And what I mean by that is, you have to, when you have a theme in a movie, you have to be able to effectively set it up so that when you make certain decisions in the movie at the end of it, it has to sort of all coalesce and come together. And I think at least it's very obvious that they were going for something with this movie, and they're going for something with the theme in particular, and I'm talking about the main primary theme. And once you have that theme in place and in play early on, it makes some of the decisions that they made later on in the movie make way more sense. Because I remember when going into this movie, I thought, wait, what are all these characters doing here? This is supposed to be a Spider-Man movie. What's the point of inserting all these, characters that are normally not supposed to be in this kind of a movie? But then when I do think about what the theme is for the film and what they're kind of going with that kind of theme, I start to realize that, you know what, it makes sense that every single one of these characters are in play to some degree, uh, when they are in play. I can't get too much into it right now without getting into spoilers. Specifically, if I were to sort of lay out that theme, it would definitely get into spoilers. But it was really cool. I like it because the movie has layers to it, and those layers make sense, especially when you're looking at it from a uh, thematic, you know, no such thing as entertainment, you know, point of view, where you're looking at it from that aspect of, what can I learn from this, right? What can I take in and bring into, my own personal life, right? What can I actually do in terms of change certain things that I might be doing. And I think one of the things that the movie definitely brings up, and you can kind of see it in the trailers a little bit, is this idea of someone throwing themselves away into their work and it's essentially ignoring their personal life and ignoring everything except what they're doing at work. And just the idea of someone becoming a workaholic, right? And in this case, you kind of get a lot of that within this film, and you have Peter having to deal with that. And then the conflicts that come up within the film sort of bring that into a head, and then ultimately they're able to tie it up in the bow at the end, I think effectively enough. My biggest problems with the movie were probably the third act, which third acts are really hard to do, I think, in a lot of superhero movies, in the sense that uh, they can kind of be hit or miss. Some of my favorite superhero movies ever have a great first act, awesome second act, and then they just can't stick the landing in that third act, right? And I think that with this one, because of how well they execute on their main theme and how it still kind of works towards the end of the movie, I think it still fits together at the end of the day. But there are some things holding the film back, in that I do think that because there's so much going on in the movie and so many different characters, that are not just like throwaway characters, but like, main, you know MCU characters in the movie, it kind of takes away from the best parts of the film, which happen to be those Peter Parker moments, and specifically some of those Peter Parker moments with characters that are already within the franchise, right? So MJ, Ned, that kind of stuff. So it really does take away from that, and it also takes away from Peter's journey a little bit when you're having to figure out what in the world's Bruce Banner doing here, or why in the world are we dealing with Punisher and all this kind of stuff, right? And not until it wraps it up in a bow at the end does it all make sense. But ultimately, that is a bit of a distraction. But overall, I definitely enjoyed the movie. My wife enjoyed it as well. It was really fun for her to watch it because uh, I've been more optimistic about the MCU as of late. I think from Thunderbolts onward, I could tell that Marvel figured something out and they were back in business in terms of them delivering great characters and great character work at least. And I could see that from since that film, I would say at least, right? And I was anticipating this movie to be a good one. My wife was a skeptic between the two of us. She was essentially, yeah, done with Marvel for the most part. She also saw Thunderbolts and she saw Fantastic Four, and she enjoyed them. They thought they were okay, but when I would say the famous "We are so back" line, she wouldn't agree with me at all. But when watching this movie in the theater, I looked over at her and I said it, and she's like, "Yeah, yeah, we are." In the sense that, funny thing, 10 years ago, I think it's been 10 years. 10 years ago, her and I went and watched Captain America: Civil War together. This was early on in our relationship, and here we are 10 years later watching another Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, and sort of being able to see that progression over time and see the character grow over time. It's really special. I think Tom Holland did a great job in this movie. I think that Ned Leeds' character, I'm forgetting the actor's name right now, unfortunately, but the guy who's playing Ned Leeds was enjoyable as well. Zendaya is given more to work with, I think, in this movie than she was in other ones. So it's more enjoyable for those reasons. And then Sadie Sink's character, whom I cannot talk about at all because this is supposed to be a spoiler free review. Her character is a mystery character, right? But the execution with that character in this film to me is incredible. I really liked a lot of what was done. Now, I will say that the characterization that we get of this character, it is a character, ripped straight out of the comics, but I think that they're very different to how do I put this? I don't think that what we saw on screen is what we get in the comics from the character for the most part, right? I think they really went their own route here in terms of what they want to do with the character. They really switched the character up immensely, right? With what they're like in the comics. And I don't know how I feel about that yet, but I will say, I say, yeah, it's tough doing this without getting into spoilers. I do know how I feel about it, but I won't get into it until my spoiler review, which will come within the coming days, right? I need to digest the movie some more, which I'm going to be doing some of that live with you guys here today, right? But I'm going to be digesting it a bit more and sort of organizing my thoughts. But I will say I enjoyed Sadie Singh's character, and she was a much bigger part of the story than I thought she would be, significantly bigger. One thing as well is the movie's about 2 hours, 25 minutes. I wish it was a bit shorter. I think it would, if they could somehow have gotten it to maybe 2:05, I think it would have been like almost a perfect film, right? But there is some stuff in there where it's like, maybe we could have cut some ninja fights here or there. Maybe we could have cut, some montages here or there. And you could tell that they wanted to stuff this movie with a bunch of stuff, and then they had to cut it down later on. A great example is at the beginning they have this montage of Spidey being Spidey over the course of 4 years, and he fights a lot of different villains and stuff. And it reminds me a lot of the Fantastic Four intro scene from the Fantastic Four movie, where they're also doing a montage of a lot of villains they're fighting as well. So you could tell that again, they really wanted to cut the movie down from a 3 hour movie to 225, which is what it looks like they did. And I don't think they could have done any better, honestly, in terms of bringing it lower. But ideally, there's just something about that sweet spot of getting it down to 205, maybe 210 tops, that I think would have made the movie a bit better. But overall, man, just in terms of my overall thoughts here, I recommend the movie. I would say that it is good to great, right? It depends. I can't fully the first time seeing a movie, it's almost like there's a spell upon you and you're not seeing things as well as you can or should, right? All you remember is kind of the feelings and the emotions of how you feel sort of coming out from it and whether or not you'd recommend it to someone. So I can't really get into all the details in terms of how good the movie is in terms of scale of 1 to 10, any of that stuff. For that, I'm going to need more viewings, more digesting to kind of figure it out. But just off the top of my head, ballparking things, I would definitely say that this is one of the better Spider-Man movies overall. I will say that also it is one of those movies where like you don't need that much history to be able to get into it and enjoy it in the sense that funny enough, like my wife and I are watching it and we hadn't seen Spider-Man No Way Home in oh god knows how long, maybe 3 years, 2 years, I don't know, it's been a while, right? And she completely forgot a lot of the film, especially like the Aunt May stuff which was showing up in this movie, and she also forgot some of the stuff regarding, the Doctor Strange stuff, right? And yet, despite that, she quite thoroughly enjoyed the movie, despite not remembering those things. So to me, I mean, you could maybe not even seen No Way Home, and because of how well they execute in this movie, you would still have a good time. So overall, if you're on the fence on seeing it, if it's worth watching in terms of Marvel movie, I definitely recommend it. I think that it is, specifically because I really do believe how well they execute on their theme and the sort of the message that they're pushing across in the film. They do a good job with it, and I think that the theme is very much like modern, I guess you could say. Not modern in a bad way, but modern in a sense of it's something that a lot of us are dealing with and are facing right now that is worth paying attention to, right? So I think because of those reasons, I definitely would recommend it. There's a lot to pull from in this movie. I'll end my review with this, which is sort of takeaways that I'm going to take from this movie and things that I'm going to implement into my own life based upon at least the first viewing, right? I think one of those big major ones is, oof, actually, can I say this without spoiling the film? Uh, I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, I'll say that one of the main things and main takeaways for me, at least from this film, is uh, making sure that I take the time to reach out to people within my personal life that I know, and take the time to uh, do a good job of building solid relationships. One of the things that the movie makes me realize is because of the situation that happens with Peter, and he sort of loses all the memories that he has with his friends, you realize very quickly that friendships are not that easy to build and they're not that easy to cultivate and definitely take some time. And one of the things I've noticed, as an adult now in my 30s, when you're younger, relationships are a lot easier to build. It's like you're in the same class, you end up being friends, that kind of a thing. And they tend to sort of last seemingly uh, a bit longer. And you make friends with people and you think you're going to be friends with them forever, right? In the moment. And you start to realize that's not the case. And oftentimes those friendships sort of fall apart. And yeah, you start to grow up and you realize, hey, like if you don't pay attention to those relationships well enough and don't tend to them well enough, they disappear, right? And you end up alone in a lot of cases. And it made me realize the importance of really nurturing relationships and investing in those relationships in terms of time, in terms of whatever it might be, right? Because ultimately they're important. You need them, right? And I think for me at least, uh, coming in from watching this movie is making me realize that I'm gonna have to send some texts, make some phone calls, and yeah, like m- do things a bit differently. Let's just say. So I definitely appreciated that aspect of the film, and sort of what it's pushing, right? And again, this kind of gets into some spoilers without fully getting into spoilers, but that's my gist on it in terms of my takeaways from the movie. Now, the good news as well is this movie does have a lot of stuff in it, and by a lot of stuff I mean there's a lot of nuggets that you can take home with you and sort of implement into your own life. I think there's a lot of small things that once I get into spoilers later on in my spoiler review, I'll be able to talk about. But in terms of light spoilers, that's the most I'll take away. But ultimately, this is definitely a movie that I enjoyed watching. My wife enjoyed it. I'm going to watch it again a couple times. And then once I get my spoiler review ready, I will dive into some of those details in terms of major takeaways from the film, in terms of, stuff that we can sort of implement, I can implement at least in my own life. And then also, I'm going to be able to dive into how well they execute on certain themes and how well they're actually able to illustrate these realities that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that we don't really think about, but when they're put into this context of this movie, it's, I think, quite beneficial. Now, when I look at this movie overall, uh, what I'll say is that it has a very strong hook in the sense that you have the MCU characters, you have the action, you have all that stuff. So there's a nice hook that brings you into the movie. Pacing is nice as you're watching it. You don't get bored. There's stuff that's in there, right? And then when it comes to the substance, because every great superhero movie has a great hook, but also some great substance. What I will say with this one is that the hook is pretty solid. The action's pretty good, and man, Pete, or I should say Spider-Man in this looks incredible. Like that suit looks awesome. And yeah, he just looks so good. Like I could just watch I could I could watch it all day, watch the movie all day essentially, right? In terms of how gorgeous the reds and the blues look, right? I mean, I had to go all red and blue for for the showing tonight as well, right? Like it just the colors pop and I really like it. Uh, you, it's unashamed, right, in its comic bookness. So the hook is really solid here. What I'll say to it is, I think where the movie is lacking, and it's ironic because I've been talking about the themes this entire time, but the themes of the movie, although good, I don't think that they're timeless and eternal in the same way that other themes have been in previous Spider-Man movies. And I think because of that, that's what may not put this movie as like a top tier Spider-Man film, right? A great example is as a character, Spider-Man's main theme is with great power comes great responsibility, right? And that is a timeless theme. It is incredible. There's so much you can do with it, and because of that, it's kind of hard to mess up the character of Spider-Man because that theme sort of is underlying them throughout their entire career, right? So what this movie ends up doing is they kind of spin that a little bit and reverse it a little bit in terms of what Spider-Man's arc is within the film. And because of that, the theme that they actually then execute upon, although it's, I would say, a relevant theme for our day and age, I don't think it's as timeless as the theme I just mentioned, as well as other themes that were in throughout other Spider-Man films. No Way Home, for example, is a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man movie, or at least one of the better ones. And in that film, there's a couple of really strong themes that flow through that movie that are also themes that are very timeless, right? That Spider-Man ends up learning from those other Spider-Men. So ultimately, because of those things and the weight of those themes, it actually lifts that movie up much more than it needs to. Even though, for example, the plot's kind of weird, doesn't make sense, even though there's some writing issues here and there, because of how effective it executes on those particular themes that it chooses, it's able to, I think, edge out this film in terms of how good the movie is. Also, it yeah, I would say it's also more hype, more action with No Way Home. So I wouldn't say that this is as good as No Way Home as a movie, but I will say that it's better than most other Spider-Man movies that have come out, and overall, it's definitely worth a watch. And in my case, and probably others, it's worth a rewatch as well. So, with that said, I'm going off for 19 minutes here, but this has been, I think, a solid movie to watch, and I definitely recommend it. And with that said, stay tuned for my spoiler review, where I'm going to get really, really deep into some of these themes and some of the different things I've been able to pick up and learn from the movie, because there's a lot of great stuff in here. So hit the like button, subscribe for that spoiler review that will be coming in the next few days. Anyway, with that said, now we're going to get into the part of the stream where I'm going to switch over the camera. check out some other reviews that are currently out. I have a couple loaded in here, and just kind of get the feel for what other people are thinking. And I'm gonna obviously add my commentary as well. I picked some reviews that were spoiler free from what I could tell, at least, with the caption, the thumbnail and captions. I have not watched any of these yet, and I basically just searched Spider-Man Brand New Day review on YouTube and clicked the first like 5 or 6 videos that showed up. So no biases here. Essentially, I just picked whatever I saw, and well, I guess algorithmic biases. But anyways, with that said, I'm gonna get into these videos and see what the vibe is. So let me go and share my screen here. Okay, so let's do the first.
Spider-Man movie or
Okay. Wow. All right. So let's start with this one. Okay, so new rock stars, no spoilers. Okay, let's get into it.
did this one thing hold it back? I'm Eric Voss of the New Rockstars channel, and this is a spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Brand New Day. I was lucky to see this movie a bit early on Monday evening, and in this video I'm going to walk you through
This is gonna be a bit tricky because I'm used to watching these videos a bit faster, but I know when dealing with live streams, if I do it at 2x speed and you're listening to me at 2x speed, then it's 4x speed for the thing, and it's like, oh, it becomes a mess anyway. So I'm gonna listen to this regularly, but I kind of have to get used to the speed shift here. But yeah, anyway, let's get into it. Oh, I like the shirt.
through what worked, what I could have used more or less of, and how it compares to other Spider-Man films, and in general, what to expect going into it. Again,
I will say what I could have used more of is more action set pieces. I think that Dustin Daniel Cretton, that's his name, really, really, really good at thinking up creative ways to use Spider-Man with his swinging, with his fighting. It was really nice. So I think it would have been nice to see more of that, just because it's fun to look at. But the movie does have plenty of action. And what I would have wanted to see less of, to be honest, is less Hulk, which he wasn't that there too much. Less, I don't know. I kind of like the Punisher in this one, but I still want less of him as well. I really want just a Spider-Man focused story. I think there's just something special about that character that when you share the screen time with them, it kind of does a disservice because of how great Spidey is. But nonetheless, I still did appreciate what they did do.
and there will be no spoilers in this video. All right, let's start with some general thoughts. Here is the reaction I posted on social media immediately upon walking out of the theater. The movie is an emotionally meaty dwelling on loneliness and suppressing what we truly are. With incredible stunts, VFX, and coloring, it's the best looking Spider-Man film since the Raimi era. The webbing has never been stickier. The Hulk sequence was my favorite Marvel action scene in years. Sadie Sink is devastating in her role, and I can't wait to see more of her in the MCU. Overall, the film reflects some of my favorite Spider-Man stories in the way that Peter's world is so crowded with familiar faces and insanity, and how his hero's journey can be such an inspiration to others. It takes maybe a few minutes too long to get into everything, but it's a sweet tale that will mean a lot to a lot of people. The biggest impact of this film requires plot details to even describe, so nothing further from me for now. Spider-Man.
Exactly. And I agree with that too. It's like you want to get into it because the way they execute with this one is it's something special, man. So I agree with what he's saying there. Is like you don't want to spoil it to really get into those details. But one of the things that he mentioned there, let me go back to it here. So yeah, so one of the things he mentions here is a couple characters. Sadie Sink's character again, I agree with 1,000%. Yeah, most of this I think is pretty solid in that. The action set pieces are really, really nice. The Hulk one is nice, as you mentioned. The one with the Punisher, there's a couple of them. So yeah, no, I agree with him 100%. Like, I hope Dustin does the next Spidey movie because he did a great job with this one, man. Very, very creative with the way they use the webbing in different ways. There's this one sequence toward the end where it's just, man, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, well, I'll stop it
The impact of this film requires plot details to even describe, so nothing further from me for now. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a truly enjoyable Spider-Man story that whips Peter into a new age of emotional and physical maturity, and a story that provocatively tethers him to other special individuals in his world in ways he tries to suppress his sometimes monstrous gifts and walk a lonely path. It is the saddest Spider-Man film I've ever seen, and its feelings all ooze and torrents because it's also the most visceral. The webbing is stickier, the flop sweat is drippier, and the blood is redder than ever before. You can almost smell this movie. In so many ways, Brand New Day is the MCU Spider-Man movie we've all wanted for so long. Director Destin Daniel Cretton and his director of photography Brett Pollack shot the action with gorgeous detail with
So
Cretton and his director of photography Brett Pollack shot the action.
The hand. I won't get into the reasoning as to why they're there. I think it's just like, hey, let's just get the hand in the movie. Like, the reason why they're in the movie is kind of like, okay, why are they here? But the visuals they provide, oh man, it's so good. It's like, on one hand, you're like, you didn't have to do it, Dustin, you just didn't. But then when you see what he does with it, you're like, okay, all right, I see why you did it. I see why you did it.
With gorgeous detail, with vibrant coloring, warm lighting, and graceful choreography. Tom Holland is.
And I will emphasize again, vibrant coloring. That's very important, because back in my day, we used to have superhero movies where people would wear black leather, where they'd have desaturated suits. I'm looking at you, Andrew Garfield. And back then, color was not as big of a deal. We didn't understand the importance of vibrant, flashy colors, right? There's something about it where we live in a world nowadays, actually, that's very muted and subdued. Everything's gray, brown, teal, beige, right? It's just very sandy and boring. It doesn't work, right? And there's something special about seeing vibrant color, because it colors up the rest of your world. It's like, if you see something that's bright red, like real bright red, the next thing you spot that's red is going to stand out slightly more, and you're able to even better recognize the beauty within that color, right? And whenever you sort of desaturate and mute things, it kind of has that opposite effect, right? The visually, it's bothersome. And what I really like about superhero stuff in particular is it's colorful, it's bright, it's vibrant, it has tons of energy in it with it. And because of that, you get that visual flavor, whether it's flipping through the pages or watching it on screen. So the fact that they dove in with that color, especially this suit here, look at that suit, man. Like, hold on,
has reached new depth.
Oh man, look at that suit. So because of the color that they were able to sort of put forth, right, within the movie, it goes a very, very long way. There's a character in there in the movie with red hair, and the actress in real life also has red hair, and I think she does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she does. Anyway, in the movie, her red hair looks bright and vibrant, right? And something tells me that they went in and painted it in a little more to sort of add in that color, or maybe it's a wig, I'm not sure, but it looked really red, right? And that's what I'm talking about, is like the vibrancy of the colors goes a very, very long way, and people genuinely appreciate it. I think there's something about it. And one of the things is, like those Greek sculptures that we see nowadays, where it's almost looks like the sculpture is all white, right? And we think that the Greeks had their sculptures that were standing that were all white and basically, clay and emotionless. But in reality, from what I understand from historians at least, these were painted sculptures. Not only were they painted, but they were painted in vibrant colors, right? And I think there's something to that we've lost in our day and age with the vibrancy of color. It's like, you're on the road, every car is gray, black, darker shades of gray, like 4 or 5 shades of gray. And then you have the red cars that sometimes drive by, who have to pay a tax to be read in terms of more expensive car insurance and stuff. But anyways, I'm on a color rant here. I digress. Let's let the man cook.
Peter's gravitas. Gone is the plucky Stark intern with too many toys. In his place is a loner who sulks about New York City like he
still has some toys, though.
Has the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk theme playing in his head. The amount of MCU connectivity and supporting roles of other Marvel characters and elements comes off as a bit chaotic and uneven, as it should for the chaotic and uneven state of this cinematic universe as of late, but I will always love seeing how Peter Parker is such a grounding force and friendly neighborhood source of inspiration for all these other freaks. Sadie Sink is the...
And again, I agree with that. It's grounded, uneven. It almost doesn't work. What strings it together is Peter in an interesting way, and also the theme, the main theme associated with the character of Peter. Those things together are able to bring together these weird pieces that don't seem like they should fit.
Clear standout of this film. She's a brilliant stroke of casting by Marvel Studios that gives this franchise a very much needed bright future. But choosing to make her character a secret throughout the marketing was stupid and unnecessary. What works in this movie? Spider-Man Brand New Day is the most beautiful live-action Spider-Man film, I think. It's not as beautiful as the animated Spider-Verse films, in my opinion, but those are operating in a different medium with different tools.
Great point. It is very beautiful in that sense. I had to wear those 3D glasses, super annoying. They're darker, so then a lot of the color and vibrancy is kind of muted by some of that, but it still looked great and gorgeous. But what I'll say here that's super important that he mentioned, and it's really unfortunate, I believe that from what I've seen, the best medium for superhero stories is actually animation. There's certain things you can do with animation and the vibrancy of color and all those things that you just can't do in live action the same way, or at least it's really hard to, right? But with animation, you can. And those Spider-Verse movies do an excellent job of showcasing the power of animation and superhero stories mixed in together. They're made to be, I think, animated more than anything. But live action sort of hits home more for more people because there's a lot more you can sort of learn and pick up on from an actual human emoting and acting versus an animated human, in a sense that like a lot of subtleties that you can catch that are harder to do in animation. A great example is there's a character in this movie that you're not supposed to trust, right? Going into the movie, I knew I wasn't supposed to trust him because, I get into spoilers. What can I say? I get into them. What my wife doesn't touch any of that stuff. She has no idea what any of those spoilers are. When we're watching this movie, as soon as that character is on screen and he says something, my wife's like, he's lying. Something's up with this guy. And I'm like, huh? How does she know? She didn't, but she remembers an encounter she had with someone else who also had a similar look in their eye and a similar thing that could not be trusted at all as well. At least that she had that feeling. And watching the actor give off his performance triggered the same emotion. And she's like, something's off with this guy, which is great. It's a great performance by the actor. On my end, I knew the actor was supposed to be treacherous, and I couldn't even tell, right, that he was doing that in that scene. But she could, which y'all gotta get. It's good to have a wife that can catch those things, right? Because I would have been bamboozled. But what's key is something like that is such small of a detail that is really hard to get that right in animation. You see what I'm saying? Because animation is more, more dramatic and obvious with some of the actions. So for those reasons, I think, yeah, live action works well for some superhero stuff, but ultimately, a lot of the stuff that you do get from something like a Spider-Verse movie is just impossible to do in live action, but is so, I think, incredible, right, as a work of art. So yeah, with that said, let's continue here, see what Eric's got us.
Crichton and Brett Pollack and their production designer Charles Wood, colorist Tom Poole, VFX supervisor Jerome Chen, and costume designer Sanja Milkovic Hayes all create the most saturated, tactile, and sensual New York City ever put to screen in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You can feel Peter Parker gasping and wincing and sweating and bleeding under the fabric of his suit. We get to fully immerse ourselves with Peter in the lonely and often disgusting reality it would actually be to be Spider-Man. The film showcases the average people of New York better than any Marvel film since to be Spider-Man. The film showcases the
This scene right here. Oof. This scene right here. There's this actor in the scene. I've never seen him before in anything, but boy oh boy did he get a nice big break with this scene right here. It's like an extra. There's a lot of extras doing a lot of extra stuff in this movie, and one of the extras just you know kills it in this scene. And this scene leading into the next one, and then the next one. Oh man, the execution's great, and I want to get into it, but you're gonna have to get into the spoiler review for me to get into it. But man, oh man, oh man,
the average people of New York better than any Marvel film since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. Due to the nature of the powers of Sadie Sink's character, we get to see over
how are you gonna spoil a character like that by showing who Sadie Sink is playing in the shot?
a dozen day players all get moments to shine.
That could have been anyone. That might have been Sadie Sink. That could have been another character that.
And they're all great, both when they're playing Sadie Sink's character controlling them and when they come to their senses. And I loved the themes of the story, the evolution Peter undergoes and the danger of trying to suppress it, both for himself and others. It's surprisingly heavy on John Bernthal's Frank Castle, the Punisher.
Not the theme I was talking about, by the way, that brings everything together. But yeah, that's a solid, smaller, lighter theme that's within the film as well. I would say like secondary or tertiary theme.
Sure, and these actors who go back to filming each other for their Marvel auditions in 2015 really do lean on each other here to bring some extra traumatic heft to the occasion. Tom Holland is more heartbreaking than he's ever been, and Bernthal in particular.
Actually, let me get back to these guys right here. Great chemistry between the three of them. You could tell they love each other. There's a scene in this movie with 2 out of 3 of these characters. Actually, there's 2 of them. One towards the very end, and then one towards like maybe the middle. Oh, like one of them's like just adorable. Like, oh man, that's a great scene. And then the other one's like, wow, what just happened? What just happened in this scene? Like, there's some really solid scenes in this that contrast extremely well with the high octane action that's in there. So that contrast between the crazy action and the drama is on full tilt in this movie, and in a really nice way. So no, these three, they did a solid job, I would say. But what's nice here is they've reduced their role in the film to way more supporting role than it was, say, in prior movies, right? I would argue that there may be usually they're top 3, 4, 5 in the call sheet. Let's say in this movie they're more like 5, 6, maybe 7. Right? There's a couple other characters in front of them that do a great job. I think that are in a good position. So these guys are supporting more. And I think that works out for the characters because they're nice to kind of see. But I think overall the way these two have been written, they're not standout, mind-blowing characters. So because of that, it makes sense that they've been pushed to the side a little bit so that richer characters like, say, Frank Castle or even Sadie Sink's character can showcase what they can do in the film.
Each other for their Marvel auditions in 2015 really do lean on each other here to bring some extra traumatic heft to the occasion. Tom Holland is more heartbreaking than he's ever been, and Bernthal in particular is funnier than he's ever been in the MCU. And again, I really love Sadie Sink's character and her performance and really what she represents in this movie to Peter Parker and to the cinematic universe at large. To say any more would be a spoiler, and I am duty bound to avoid discussing it in this video. But overall, Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob.
Duty bound indeed. Now, I will say, even if you have the spoiler, it doesn't actually spoil the film entirely. It's still a pretty solid film and pretty good, even if you know the spoiler. And I knew the spoiler going into it. But I will say that there was a moment in the theater where you do get a reveal, and the entire theater was like, what? Like, everyone literally was like, what? And it was a nice moment to see how everyone was just shocked and surprised. And the reveal is one of those reveals where it's like they write something on the screen rather than tell you, and yet everyone's like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? And what's really nice is later on in the film, it's more of a direct reveal for those who didn't read the thing. And, that happens as well. And by then people already clocked it, right? But no, I still think it's worth, going in spoiler free for those who are spoiler free. So yeah, I'm going to keep that the case. So if someone else in these next videos that I'm watching does start to spoil things, I'll pause it, try and, escape the spoiler before they get to it.
Battle on, I'll give the best performances they've ever given as these characters. Zendaya in particular has to carry one emotionally dizzying moment and handles it with incredible finesse that makes a nearly
Agreed.
impossible truth for people who love these films something we can handle. And then Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and the Hulk really did run the biggest risk of being an unnecessary Marvel cameo. But in this film, he represents the fullest extreme of what Peter is going through and the threat posed by Sadie Sink's character, and the result is the best Hulk sequence ever in the MCU. I'm not kidding. For 18 years, this cinematic universe has treated the character of the Hulk as a joke, or as a VFX headache to work around, or to not show, or just too much id to fit into the frame. But this movie finally completely sticks the landing with the character in all of the Hulk's forms.
Okay, so I do disagree with this idea of the best sequence with the Hulk. No, I don't think so. No, there's been movies, sorry, that have had better sequences. I think what's great about the Hulk in here is that they they're able to really showcase with very little time how varied and rich the character is. It's very brief. Like, he's in the movie, I think 10 minutes or less. Honestly, it's not that long, but they're able to do a lot within that time frame. So it's very effective and efficient. Now, whether or not it's the best, that's where I would disagree, because I still think 2012's Avengers had some really nice sequences with the Hulk, and he brought a certain energy to that movie that is undeniable, truly undeniable. So, for those reasons, minimum, I got to give it to 2012.
And gives us the most thrilling Hulk action sequence I've ever seen on film. It's like what Ang Lee was dreaming of in the 2003 film. It really lives up to all the promises of what the MCU should be. It's
Actually, you know what? I'm thinking about it again, and I'm like, it was a pretty good scene, though. I think so. It was a pretty nice one, but I don't know. I think the moments were bigger in the Avengers film, and longer lasting and more effective than I think they were in this one. So I would still give it to 2012, and possibly maybe a moment in Age of Ultron as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
perfect. I have notes. At 2 hours and 25 minutes, this movie feels like 2 hours and 25 minutes. It's an emotional. Sadie Sink's character and Bruce Banner arrive, the movie coalesces into a strong pace, but until then, the opening act does drag a bit. Perhaps it's a factor of so much of the opening act already being in the marketing for the film. It might be true, but also structurally, this movie does take about 10 minutes too long to get into gear. Like, overall, the film can just feel a bit aimless as it mopes its way from beat to beat. Now,
that's what I'm saying. I think it needed to be 10 to 20 minutes shorter, and it would have hit that sweet spot. The problem is that I don't necessarily know where you cut out that time. I mean, you could cut out some of the montage stuff at the beginning, but I think it's somewhat necessary as well for those who are not deeply in the know with some of these movies, or have watched, a lot of the previous installments. It is the fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man, right? So I get that too. So I don't know, it's tough. I don't know where you cut those 10-20 minutes, right? Especially since there's so many great scenes within the film. It's really hard to say where you cut it, but it does need it cut somewhere.
Now, some of the Marvel cameos are in the marketing, some of them aren't. And I won't say which category the following is, but there is one element from the broader MCU that is used in a particular way in this movie that makes zero logical sense. If you haven't seen the movie yet, it's probably not the one you're thinking of. But when you see this movie, you will know what I'm talking about, and you're going to say, really? It's like a kind of jokey cameo that the movie expects us to very much not see as a joke at a critical moment of the film.
I honestly don't know who he's talking about. I'm trying to remember. What is he talking about? Which cameo? Huh. Jokey cameo that you're not supposed to see. I honestly don't know. Like, man. Huh. I'm thinking about it. I honestly don't know what he's talking about.
I understand why the filmmaker included it, and I think a lot about it works really well visually in this movie, but it is absolutely insane.
Oh, come on. What's going on with the internet again? This happened last time I was streaming around this time as well. That's odd. Because when I run speed tests on this, I'm still at like 260, 270, so I don't know.
It works really well visually in this movie, but it is absolutely...
Okay. I might have to switch to another view if this continues. But yeah, I don't know what scene he's talking about here. I genuinely have no idea. What? It's interesting visually, but actually... Okay. The only thing I can think of that he's talking about is... Okay. The only thing I can think of that he's talking about is the final action set piece in the film. I'll say that without spoiling it. I think that the final action set piece might be what he's talking about. I think it is, but yeah, that's the only thing that's coming up.
Insane from a logical standpoint. And finally, this is more of a complaint for the marketing than it is for the film itself, but now that I have seen the film, it was 100% a mistake by Sony.
I think he's going to talk about Jean Grey and how they shouldn't. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Oh, man. Huh. Oh, man. That's funny. That's funny. Can you tell this is my fourth stream? Okay. So, yeah, I think he's going to talk about how they're sort of marketing the film and how they basically should have revealed something that they didn't reveal. I won't dive too deep into it here. It doesn't look like this video is loading properly either. So hold on, let me go down to this and see. Yeah,
in action alone, this could be seen as the best live action Spider.
Yeah, okay. I can't get his final verdict here. I don't know what's going on with my connection right now. Let me jump on to the next one. We've had enough of Eric Voss for today. Okay, Eric, that's enough. Let's get into the next review here. Let's see. So I don't know what order these are in. Oh, that's more Eric. Okay. Okay, so Campy is here. Let me see here. All right, let's see. We'll watch a Campy review.
Officially opens today, but as many of you know, and as many of you probably attended last night, Amazon had special advanced fan screenings of Spider-Man in a number of theaters across the country. One screening of it in my theater, and I finally had a chance to go out and watch it last night. Chris, I know you already had a chance to see the film yourself. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. My expectations, I had some pretty big expectations, but not through the roof. Like it's Destin Daniels.
Okay. So before he says something else here, I noticed with movies particularly, expectations can make or break the movie for a lot of people, especially upon a first viewing. So when he's saying that here, I feel like it can sort of, make or break it for him here. My prediction here is that he had high expectations and it met most of them, but not all of them. My expectations were pretty high for the movie as well. I do think that it got close to, but didn't fully reach all of them as well. So I think that's where he's going to go here. But at least with this movie, it's good enough of a film to where high expectations don't necessarily harm it too much. But yeah,
Daniel Cretton, the guy who directed Shang-Chi and Wonder Man. So like I was expecting good. I've loved the Spider-Man Tom Holland version so far. I've loved all of them. I still think the three best Spider-Man movies of all time are Sony produced ones, which is
again, so many buts. Like this is the biggest butt that's about to come.
Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. But I've really enjoyed the Tom Holland John Watts directed Spider-Man movies. So I expected a good movie.
Yes.
For those of you
He's about to say it's great,
who saw my out of theater reaction,
which I did not see.
I was not ready for how much I would love this movie. I still think those three Sony ones are still the best all time. But I think this one, Brand New Day, has become what I did not think it would become, my favorite of the Tom Holland era Spider-Man films. And I feel that way. And I'm not the only one who feels that way, by the way. I mean, you look over there, the critic rating has gone up to 91%. We now have verified, because of the screenings last night, we have some verified audience rating.
Yeah, I'm going to open the door a little bit here. Hopefully no one walks in. Yeah, so I do agree with it, to this notion here, to an extent, in that I do think that this movie is a better executed film than No Way Home. I do think No Way Home still hits harder, and I think it's because those themes tend to hit harder. But yeah, this still was really good. If I was to look at it, I think I agree with them in that I do prefer this film over what is it? Not Brand New Day, over No Way Home. I think I still much prefer this movie, but I will say that I do think that No Way Home is like it's a bigger event film, and because of those reasons, I think that I think people may lean more towards that one, enjoy it better. But again, I don't know. But maybe I'm wrong. My guess is that's the case, right? Personally, I did really enjoy this. I just don't know, over time, if it's going to be as beloved as No Way Home was, which it's very beloved despite a lot of its flaws. I will say this movie has significantly less flaws than No Way Home does, but I think No Way Home might still top it.
That we're seeing are at 98%, which is just insane. And I understand those numbers because not only is this, to me,
and I also think part of the numbers here in regards to the 98% is the fact that we've had a lot of sort of lackluster outings from superhero movies in general over the past couple of years. So it's like seeing something this epic after so many, flops and bombs, I think plays into that as well. And is one of those things that will really drive up repeat viewings of this thing. Because as I mentioned in my stream from yesterday, there's something about us that really, really wants to see this archetype and these characters portrayed with these themes involving self-sacrifice in particular. There's something about that where we want to see that happen. And I think this movie does a great job of sort of showcasing that. And because of that, yeah, it makes sense that the popcorn meter is where it is.
The most mature of the Spider-Man movies, delving into the most mature themes that we've had in any of the Spider-Man.
Okay, I want to touch on that without spoiling the theme I'm talking about that I want to get into in the spoiler review. So he mentioned here it's tackling the most mature themes we've seen in a Spider-Man movie. I agree with him saying it's the most mature Spider-Man movie, and it's not because Frank Castle is in it, right? What a mature superhero movie looks like. Before I can actually explain what a mature superhero story is, I gotta look at the, let's say, juvenile superhero stories. Not juvenile in like a bad sense, but in terms of what's a straightforward superhero story, right? So with your superhero stories, you typically have what's called a simple theme, but that is very universal, right? So a good idea is that, you shouldn't kill people, right? That's a good example, right? Of this idea that killing is wrong, you shouldn't kill people, right? And what a superhero story will do is it will illustrate that story to its most extreme extent to teach the lesson of not killing. So you'll have DC superheroes like Superman or Batman who will go through all these crazy fights and all this stuff will happen. But ultimately, at the end of the fight, they will not kill because their rule is not to kill. And what the story is trying to teach someone who's younger is don't go out killing folks, right? So that's essentially the essence of a juvenile superhero story, right? Now, once you start to get into maturity, right, what a mature version of that story is that you shouldn't kill most of the time, but there are certain circumstances where it actually makes sense for a kill to happen, right? And what a mature story will do is it will focus on not the rule, but the exceptions to the rule. I'll say that again. A mature superhero story will not focus on the rule, but it will focus on the exceptions to that rule. And by focusing on those exceptions, what it ultimately ends up doing is it's able to provide a certain nuance that is effective and makes sense. So what this Spider-Man movie does that's great is it takes some of those traditional Spider-Man themes that are really strong and really powerful. And what it actually does is it explores the exceptions to those rules. It explores those nuances. And that's what in fact makes it more mature than the other Spider-Man films in that sense, because it's able to deal with that theme, or those themes, I should say, in a more mature level. And like I said, when I get into my spoiler review, I'll dive into that a bit more. But essentially, that's what I think the movie does incredibly well, is specifically that aspect of things. And I think that's what he's alluding to here. I don't think he's going to get into what I just got into, but I think that's definitely the case. It's why Invincible, for example, is a great mature superhero story, not because there's blood and guts and cussing and all that kind of stuff, right? The reason why it's mature is because it's exploring this idea of Mark being a superhero who doesn't want to kill, but is starting to realize that there are certain instances where he actually does need to kill. And that is the case as well, even in real life, right? Normally, you shouldn't kill people, but there are certain circumstances in which you have to put yourself in a situation where a life might be taken, right? Whether that's self defense or whatever else the case might be. But those are realities, and those are realities of the adult world. And hence, exploring those themes within these stories is what then makes them adult stories. So, anyways, let's hear what he's got to say.
Any of the Tom Holland era Spider-Man movies. It was an excellent, look at loneliness, solitude. We look at different angles of the plight of the superhero that a lot of other movies won't stop and look at. And an ongoing development. You know what they're doing with Tom Holland Spider-Man? They're doing what they did so great with Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark. He's always evolving. I remember I was talking once with Robert Downey Jr. and I told him, I said, one of the most interesting things about the character, and
this is something that's great about the MCU in general, is in the past, what they did really well is they focused on the characters and they focused on the growth and evolution of those characters. And that's why, even though they could make certain mistakes with the plot, with the villain, especially with the villains, a lot of mistakes they would make in their movies, right, that you shouldn't have in the film, because the character work was so solid and so focused, those mistakes were forgivable. Where the MCU lost its muster, essentially, right, it wasn't with necessarily just introducing all the different characters introduced. Where it really lost its sauce is they didn't pass on that knowledge of focusing on the characters and specifically the growth and arcs of those characters. And instead, they began to be more focused on the plot points and the world building and the multiverse and all these other things, and the actual main characters themselves and what those characters were going through and where they wanted those characters to arc into, those were less focused, to the extent in which a lot of people don't care for Sam Wilson's Falcon because he barely has I even called him Falcon. Sam Wilson's Captain America. I like to say Captain Falcon sometimes, because we haven't really seen him arc that much with what we got from him. A lot of these different characters that they've come out with, their arcs have been very weak, they haven't really well thought out, and ultimately, excuse me, you're missing that. With the old movies, from movie to movie, they'd have a specific arc in that film for the character. So the reason why Tony Stark in this case is evolving the way John is saying here is because they focused on the growth of the characters and what they've gone back to again since uh, Thunderbolts up until now is they've remembered that secret sauce of focusing on the growth of their characters. Thunderbolts was very character focused, right? Very, very character focused. Fantastic Four as well, also character focused, specifically on Sue in that film a lot. But overall, it was a very character focused film. They didn't really get into a lot of plot and a lot of multiverse stuff or any of that really. They just focused on a smaller character story. And this movie as well, a smaller character story and focusing on the arc of this character. So they're back simply because of that alone.
I asked him if this was something he wanted to do and tried to do on purpose. I said, I feel like every time we see Tony, he's not the same Tony. Like, he's clearly still Tony Stark, but it feels like all of his experiences slightly change him along the way. And he said, that's exactly what I said to the, this is what Robert Downey Jr. said. He said, that's exactly what I said to the writers and to Kevin. You know, you've got this man, this flawed, broken man who is going through these things that would put a lot of people in therapy for the rest of their lives. And it changes. And I got tones of that watching Tom Holland in this. Is he's clearly been impacted and affected by the events that's gone on in the previous Spider-Man movies, putting him where he is. He's still clearly Peter, but he's evolving and he's changed. I'm not even talking about his spider DNA. I mean, he's evolving and he's changed. And I loved it. I thought the tightness of the narrative was impeccable. I kept waiting for the narrative gaps and I kept waiting for those narrative loopholes and flaws.
And I agree with this one as well. I think Voss in the previous video was kind of saying the opposite in that he felt it took too long to get started. But I do agree with him here in that it does have a nice flow to it and pacing to it for the most part, to where, like I said, it's hard to figure out where you would cut things out. Maybe, chip off the beginning and ending of some scenes, right? I don't know. But it did have a nice flow to it. At no point was I watching it and getting bored per se. Not to any real extent. And again, it's a 2-hour, 25-minute movie. It doesn't feel quick by any means. I won't say that, but it does flow. It does flow from scene to scene in a pretty solid manner.
And plot holes. I never found a single one. I thought the tightness of the narrative was flawless. I'm not saying it's a flawless movie, but I thought the tightness of the narrative was flawless. And you know what, Chris? I come out of a lot of movies, even movies that I really enjoy and really love. And I often think sometimes they're not edited down enough. Like I'll often come out of films I really like and say, oh, I loved it, but it could have handled being trimmed, cut about 10 minutes.
Exactly what I was saying. So I'm not crazy here. I think that it can use the trimming. It's just where do you take it out of, right? Where do you take
it out? 15 minutes out would have been a little leaner, meaner, tighter. This is a long movie, and I thought the pacing was fantastic. I love the pacing. I never once felt like it dragged or lulled. I always thought every scene had a specific narrative purpose and that it had cadence to it, and then it moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. A lot of media, films, whatever you want to call it, it's like you'll get some scenes that have a purpose, beginning and end, and you'll get other scenes where it's like they're just showing you stuff so that you have information for later, and those scenes are kind of pointless in a way. It's like, to me, a good scene is one where things at the beginning of the scene are represented and sort of showcased, but then once you get to the end of the scene, there's something about that picture that changes in a dramatic way to where you're looking at a completely different scene. You're looking at a revelation from a character or something changing within one of these characters. And I think that this movie does a good job of, not with all of its scenes, but with a lot of its scenes, having something happen that changes and drives the narrative forward to the extent in which it earns its runtime.
I never felt the length of the movie at all, so I was absolutely thrilled with that. I thought Oh my God. I couldn't have been happier with Hulk. Could
Oh,
not have
yeah.
been happier with
Woo.
Hulk. And you know, I said this to Chris
Yeah.
off screen before we started the show, but what I did not have on my bingo card going into Spider-Man Brand New Day
Punisher. Guarantee he's about to say Punisher.
was wanting more MJ and Frank together on screen.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Punisher.
I never had that on my bingo card. And yet I came out, and I remember saying to my wife, if they just did a Disney Plus one shot of Punisher and MJ on an adventure, I don't know, going to Disney World in Orlando, I'd totally watch it. I would totally watch. I love them. I thought Sadie Sink was wonderful in the film. And to me, Chris, I don't know, I haven't talked about this, but to me, Jacob Bartolone as Ned is the unsung treasure of these Spider-Man movies. He just brings such a different element and a different dimension to it, and a new layer, and I loved it. And
yeah, I've always enjoyed Ned since the first movie. I think it's in part because I got used to the character from the Miles Morales comics. So when I saw him in the MCU, I was like, Ned, I know that guy, right? Well, hold on, no. Genki. In the comics, it's Genki. And they transformed Genki into Ned Leeds, who's a different character in the comics. But anyways, I wonder if they're going to go that route, by the way. That would be crazy if they did that. Absolutely crazy. Because of their friendship here, it would be crazy and just gut-wrenching if they actually went that direction with Hobgoblin. But yeah, either way, I think I agree wholeheartedly, at least here.
There's a couple of scenes between Peter and Ned that I just actually, honestly, one of them was my favorite scene of the movie. I thought the action was,
and I know which scene he's talking about. I will say, in my theater, it wasn't a very reactive theater. People weren't saying much. When that scene happens that he's talking about, everyone was just like there wasn't anyone in there whose mouth wasn't open. Like, yeah, it was one of the most it was a standout scene in the movie. So I know I'm pretty sure I know which one he's talking about.
Was top notch, and it never felt like it rushed to its finish like a lot of even really good movies do.
That's a great point too. The falling action, I think that's what it's called, where you kind of get to your climax and then you have like the fallen action that sort of, tapers off. You don't want to end right at the end of the climax. You want some closure, right? I do think that they do a good job here with that as well at the end. It takes a while, but it's kind of necessary. And that's what I mean is like, you don't know, like, normally you would cut some of that falling action to get to that 210, 205 runtime. But like I said, there's so much of it that I think is necessary that gives the movie a certain kind of heart, to it. That's important.
I'm not saying this is the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time, guys. What I am saying is, in my opinion, this is the best Marvel era Spider-Man movie. And I just loved it. Anyway, Chris, you saw the film before I did. Yeah. What did you think about Spider-Man Brand New Day?
Yeah, Spider-Man is like my favorite hero of all time. With that,
shocker,
I also hold it to a little higher standard, and I get picky. So Tom Holland's previous trilogy, I wasn't always as high on as other people. I liked him, and I enjoyed what they did, but I did always walk out of his movies feeling like it's just...
Okay, so I don't know what's going on here. Maybe I'm not meant to watch all these reviews in terms of the full clip, which is fine. I will say, in terms of what he just talked about there, I do think Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies are criminally underrated. Specifically that first movie, Homecoming. I really think that movie is very much overrated, especially years later, and watching it again years later with more experience under my belt in terms of life experiences and sort of seeing what's being echoed in that film really effectively. I think it's very much underrated as a movie. So I disagree with him there simply because I think I held it in higher regard. I do agree that second Tom Holland movie, Far From Home, I don't think was as solid, right? But it went up, down with that second movie, and then way up with No Way Home in that third movie. Again, despite its multiverse plot issues, right? It just hits. The movie hits for a lot of good reasons, and it is able to bring together multiple strong themes into a nice movie here. So I don't know. I kind of disagree with him there to a definite extent, uh, in terms of liking those ones. But to that idea of this being the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, I'll say on paper it is. And what I mean by that is if you look at all the different aspects of the film, so if you look at the directing, you look at the cinematography, you look at the lighting, you look at the action, you look at the different shots selection, you look at the plot, you look at the acting. Like if you just really break everything down on paper, put like numbers next to everything and calculate it on the totals, definitely this is by far, I think, the best. I think where again things change is with certain movies, you have what I would say is what I like to call this X factor almost, where sometimes a film will be greater than the sum of its parts. So if you like dissect every single little detail, you'll end up with a final number, right? But when watching the movie, even though your final number is a 7, the film feels like a 9, even though the number, technically speaking, is like a 7. And those are films that are greater than the sum of their parts, right? And I think the thing with No Way Home is that I think it is a film that is greater than the sum of its parts, very much so. And because of that, I can't necessarily put this one above that one yet until I've rewatched sort of both and kind of had a better handle on them to kind of really score what that is. But I will say that there's plenty of movies in the MCU that are like that, where on paper they do look like they're the better film, but there's just some extra special sauce that the film has that makes it so that it rises above others, right? And I think that with this movie, it doesn't have as much sauce as No Way Home did. And mind you, I saw No Way Home at home. At home. I did not see that in the theater, which from what I remember hearing about at least was a whole nother experience. So yeah, with that said, it doesn't look like, let me see if this video
Something
works.
missing. There's something
Okay.
that I need to be part of there, and don't know what it is. Walking out of this one, I feel Destin found it. I love the new visual style he gave Tom Holland's Spider-Man, the color palette of the movie. It's so good. The swinging, the dynamic action sequences. Like, I mean, that fight
Can I
scene
cut
with
you
the
off for a second? Because
Go
I'm
ahead,
so glad you were smart enough to mention something that I think.
And I'm going to cut him off too, just because why not? Why not cut off John here? Definitely. What's awesome about, again, superhero stuff is the dynamic nature of the characters and the exaggerated swagger that is within these characters. And this film definitely carries that in spades. And I think that's incredibly important, specifically for Spider-Man's character. There's a lot of that going on. I do think that with other characters in the film, not so much, but they did really do a good job with Spider-Man's character in portraying that. And I think that's big ups to Tom Holland, but I think the director as well, excellent vision and eye for this stuff.
Failed to mention. There's been some really good city swinging scenes in the other Spider-Man movies. Nothing felt as visceral as the swinging through the city. You know where it totally got its inspiration from? I felt like I was watching the PlayStation Spider-Man game.
Insomniac Spider-Man, yeah.
It draws, it doesn't just show.
And those games are fun. At least the first one is. I haven't played the second one yet.
You Spider-Man swinging, it made you feel like you were swinging through the city. And a couple of the shots were directly taken from that Insomniac first Spider-Man game too. Anyway, sorry I'm interrupted.
They took a lot from that game in particular, a lot actually, and sort of went and incorporated it in here in interesting ways. And yeah, I love when they do that.
You're glad you were smart enough to bring that up when I wasn't.
No, anytime, Joe. Go ahead. And with that as well. Well, it's not just the visual for like eye candy for as a Spider-Man fan. Destin and what he's done great in all his projects, whether Shang-Chi, Wonder Man, it's find the emotional human element in the characters and making that the basis of the film. And the way he's mirrored
You know what? That's interesting. I like what he's saying here in that with Shang-Chi, at least I remember as well, there was a through line throughout the movie that was related to the theme that he wanted to sort of portray and represent within the film. And he was able to execute well on that. Wonder Man, I haven't seen it enough times. I don't remember particularly, but that was in there as well for Wonder Man. And yeah, with this one as well, he's really able to do a good job of holding together all his different story threads with a solid theme.
like Frank's story, Bruce Banner, Sadie Sink's character, all those thematically come together with isolation, putting yourself alone, focusing in too hard on. Like I really enjoyed that part of the story. Frank and Spidey's dynamic is probably my favorite relationship
So
that Spider-Man
good.
has had.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, I remember I was grinning from ear to ear. There's a scene with these guys towards the end where I am grinning from ear to ear, where I'm like, oh man, like these guys must have had so much fun this summer filming the Odyssey and then this, or this and the Odyssey, whenever it was filmed first. The chemistry and the execution, man, I I haven't seen a bromance that wonderful since Captain America Winter Soldier. I'm gonna flat out say it. I haven't seen a bromance that good since Captain America Winter Soldier when it comes to these guys. Like it, I was grinning from ear to ear in terms of like, yeah, that scene I'm talking about towards
they're
the
good
end.
banter, and they didn't sacrifice Frank's morals and who he is. Like he's a little bit more lighthearted than we're used to, but it worked. Up next to Spider-Man, you could tell that like Spider-Man has that effect on people where it's like, an annoying kid, but he's making me smile. So I really like that they did that with them. And again, don't want to say too much, but there's a rooftop scene with Spider-Man and MJ that just had me flabbergasted in
Oh,
some
so
of the
good.
best ways. I love the way they handled that. And
Yeah, that, like I said, I got to watch this again a few more times to really process this. But it seems like that where seeing it again a second time will hit different, and I'll kind of understand whether or not there's something about this movie that takes it towards the top when it comes to Spider-Man movies. And what I mean by that is like top two, top three, maybe yeah, top two, top three. It seems like that rewatching them and really looking at them, because there's highs in this film that hit higher than any other Spider-Man movie, I would say, to some extent. So yeah, I have to really rewatch it again and really see and observe this a little closer.
for all the flack I give the previous trilogy, this movie is very respectable to the John Watts films and builds off those and takes the best elements of that. And I really like that. I think if I
Agree 1,000%.
had only some negatives to say about it is I think it teeters the line of feeling overbloated. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. So to me, it was a little of that. There was a pool sequence, I'll just say that I felt, while funny, went on a little too long, and it felt very random to me. Maybe you know what I'm talking about, John.
I don't know, man. I love that scene. I'm not gonna
See,
lie. I love that
hey,
scene.
you're not
That was
alone. Maybe
great.
you're not alone. But for me, I was like,
A pool sequence, man. I guess I do need to rewatch it. I don't remember which pool sequence they're referencing right now, off the top of my head.
this is so okay. But other than that, man, I really dug it. I was so happy with when it ended. Just had a big smile on my face, and I hope Sony keeps Destin around. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah, so I don't know. So he's saying Sony, right? From my understanding, Sony isn't the one picking the directors for these movies. I'm pretty sure it's Marvel and Kevin Feige, because they're using Marvel Studios' as creative team, and hence using their directors like Dustin Daniel Cretton, who worked on other Marvel Disney movies, Marvel Disney projects, and nothing Sony related. So I don't know what they mean by that Sony thing, because I don't think Sony has much of a say or a choice in that. They just say, "Hey, Marvel, make us something good, and we'll we'll rake in all the dough." That's essentially what I understand their agreement to be.
This is a weird thing to say about a film on its fourth chapter.
Mhm.
I feel like they're just getting started. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like
I agree, and I think I would argue to a more meta and yeah, to a more meta extent, with superhero films in general, we're also just getting started. I mean, this is the fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, but it's also the one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, ninth, I think. Wow, it's like the ninth Spider-Man movie, and it took 9 movies for us to get to what I would argue are some adult themes in a Spider-Man film, and we're going to get to more adult themes within the MCU going forward, and within more superhero movies as well. And I think that this is just a taste of that. So I agree with him here, but I also think on a broader scale, as writers, directors, and people start to figure out these characters and these stories more, there's more richness that's going to come out of them. We're only scratching the surface of the storytelling potential that we have from superhero characters.
this movie now can be the beginning. You know what I mean?
It's a brand new day.
All it's a brand new day. I feel like it's time to just start fresh. This is a brand new day for it. This is the first time I've ever kind of felt like the title meant anything, because it certainly doesn't feel like much in the movie itself, but
Mhm.
it works so well for me. I feel like they're just getting started. And yeah, guys, I couldn't be happier with it. I was really thrilled. I think it's the best of the Tom Holland Spider-Man ones. I think. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you saw this, Chris,
Hmm.
but word of mouth has been so good, and people coming out of those advanced fan screenings last night. Everybody's, including I found out from Jonathan Boyko, who tried to log on just to double check the showtime of a movie he's going to, and AMC wouldn't let people into the site. You
Oh,
literally had to
man.
get into a queue to get onto the site.
Wow.
And that probably means that people.
And the reason why this is happening is because we're clamoring for good superhero stories. Genuinely speaking, there's something about the way these stories are told. There's something about the themes that are inherent in a super heroic character that have to be represented in order for them to be a superhero, that are crucial for, dare I say it, our existence, right? And it sounds like a really crazy hyperbolic statement to make, but I'm serious, because if you look at what makes a superhero what they are, quintessentially, what you get is someone who is willing to sacrifice of themselves for other people, regardless of the result of that. They're willing to go and essentially pick up their cross, right? And go out there above and beyond to serve others, despite it being a detriment to themselves, despite it being a cancer or a hurt on themselves. Maybe not a cancer, but a hindrance to themselves, right? So it's like them choosing to sacrifice of themselves for others. That's essential for a super heroic character. And when you don't get that, what you get ultimately is a villain, right? And in order to tell a superhero story, you need that element in place. And that same element is the very element that maps and rewires and shapes our entire society from the ground up. You cannot have a society if you do not have people who are living by that principle literally. So, with that said, it's the reason why these stories matter, and it's the reason why they're so important, and it's also the reason why, even though they've fallen off the past couple of years, because this idea has been forgotten from these characters, because you have characters that are able to bring that back, like Spider-Man in this movie. What you end up happening is people clamoring for that kind of story, because it's something that we need to see. Yesterday when I was doing my stream, I was talking about how uh, the hero complex that my wife keeps joking about that I have, I realize it's there because I watch a bunch of superhero content. And I noticed today when we were coming back from the theater, I hadn't told her this yet, but she said literally the words, "My superhero complex is back." That's what she said after we watched this movie, because there's no such thing as entertainment. That even in the couple of hours we were in there, seeing Spidey sacrifice of himself for others ultimately was programming into her mind that she's ready to go out there and sacrifice for her own family to whatever extent that she needs to, right? And I think that that is required from all of us, especially children, adults, whatever the case might be. So the reason why these stories are still bringing in butts and seats, the reason why audiences still care about them, is because of the fact that they rely on this very principle in order to work in the first place. So we are in a brand new day. We are in a renaissance, let's say, of superhero films. And with this rebirth, I really, truly do believe that the movies that are going to come from it are going to be more mature, but are also going to be richer in what is there. And I'm excited for it with what we saw from Spider-Man Brand New Day today, also what we're seeing early on from some of the Doomsday stuff, and what we will get going forward. Hopefully, when what is that, Superman Man of Tomorrow comes out, that ball is not dropped on DC's end. But regardless, what we have for these next few Marvel projects here is something special. So far, this movie, Spider-Man Brand New Day, might do $1 billion by the time we hit the weekend, right? There's a very good chance that it will. But even if it does or doesn't hit that $1 billion mark, the very next movie is Avengers Doomsday. Avengers Doomsday is almost a guaranteed billion, billion and a half, potentially 2 billion, because the hook is just so strong. Fox, X-Men versus Avengers, I mean, come on. It sells itself, right? So right off the bat, you're going to have 2 back-to-back $1 billion movies. Then the next movie after Avengers Endgame is Avengers Secret Wars, which is a sequel to Doomsday. So that's another $1 billion movie. You're looking at 3 back-to-back $1 billion Marvel movies. And I think depending on the ratings for those films, it could be potentially 6 critically acclaimed Marvel movies in a row at that point. And then after Secret Wars, you have Ghost Rider, I think that's announced. And every single Marvel movie that comes after an Avengers film typically will gross over $1 billion without miss. I don't think there has been one that has not hit $1 billion after an Avengers movie, even if it's featuring an Avengers character that hasn't even been in an Avengers movie before. Looking at you, Captain Marvel. So because of that, it doesn't matter what comes after an Avengers movie. The hype is so high that does $1 billion. So now you're looking at potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 straight $1 billion movies from Marvel. And then you get Black Panther 3 with the best director that Marvel has at the helm. That's what we're looking at in this brand new day, is those movies back to back to back to back with directors that know what they're doing and can execute very well. So when I'm saying we're just at the beginning, I'm genuinely mentioning that we're just at the beginning of this. So it's going to be something really special and interesting to see over the next few years here. And I'll be there, God willing, to be along the ride with y'all.
Hearing the word of mouth and their friends talking about it, I think everybody was kind of rushing today to try to go and pick up some tickets for Spider-Man this weekend. And man, I don't know. I've been saying 300 million opening weekend is
looks like it might be stronger.
I think it's going to do 400 million domestic, and then internationally closer to like 850, 900.
Is possible, but unlikely. Like I've been saying, yeah, sure, it's possible, but it's really unlikely. I don't know anymore. I mean, it's probably still going to come in around the 200 to 250 million dollar range, but I mean, I'm not going to bet against anything at this point.
Yeah, my theater is usually pretty empty. It was packed, absolutely packed. And this was a Thursday night showing, so it's not even like the actual premiere yet. Absolutely packed. And I picked the last showing of the night. So yeah, I mean, that's not indicative of everything, obviously, but the buzz is there. The word of mouth is there.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm not betting against anything. Anyway, guys, What do you think about?
Okay, so you know what I think. I think that overall, yeah, this is a pretty solid one. So I think I'll do one more video here. I have a ton lined up, like a ton, but I do have to call it a day. How many day puns am I gonna have in this stream here? I do have to call it a day at some point. Oh, I'm only an hour and a half in. Maybe I could stay a little longer, but excuse me. I will get into another one here. Let's see. Let's get into brand new day movie review, out of theater. Ah, Jeremy Johns. Yes, let's do it, Jeremy. Let's do it.
Fourth film, finally. Technically speaking, Toby. Peter too.
Okay, so some weird stuff is happening with the loading. I'm gonna see if I can load the next video here. Yeah, I'm gonna load a couple of these other videos. That way we get less of this buffering happening. And then we can go from there. So let's see here. Let me come back to you, Jeremy. Let me come back to you, okay? Let me come back to you, Jeremy. So let's see here. No. Lord. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Just juggling my screens here. Let's share. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is the one. Nope. Okay, we're almost there. Where is it? Here we go. All right. So we'll get back to Jeremy in a sec. I am curious to see what Tyrone has to say here.
What is happening, Magnuson?
Of course, it's frozen. I don't know what's going on, man. I really don't, because my speed test is through the roof here. But for whatever reason, when streaming at 3 a.m., this tends to happen. But hey, what other time am I gonna stream, right? Let's see. So brand new day. Yes. Okay, so we'll go back to Jeremy's review here. Hopefully it's working. Yeah, it's buffered. Or so I thought.
Band's back in a fourth film, finally. Technically speaking, Toby. Peter too was in Spider-Man No Way Home, and that was a fourth appearance, but he was still a guest in another Spider-Man's movie, to be honest and fair. But Tom Holland's Spider-Man's back for a brand new day in a brand new day. It is indeed a brand new day, so let's talk about it. So Spider-Man Brand New Day is a new Spider-Man in the Tom Holland Spider-Man continuity, and it does feel like a brand new day. The previous films feel like a very linked trilogy, a trilogy prequel that existed to make Spider-Man Spider-Man in Manhattan, to make him Spider-Man as we know him, and now here we are. It's been a couple years since Doctor Strange and Peter Parker collaborated to brainwash the entire world.
Yeah, the brainwashing conspiracy.
Into forgetting Peter Parker. Doesn't mean he's not still pining for his friends now, though. And he's having some stuff going on with his powers. This movie really does capitalize the words spider and man. Spider because his powers are going on the fritz because of his emotional state. Man because everyone thinks he's fine, but he's just suffering the emotional weight in silence. Now that
Okay, I'm messing around here, but it's true. Wow, Jeremy. Wow. Okay, it's true. It's true. There's an aspect of manhood that I don't know if it necessarily has to or needs to be this way, but too often tends to be the case where you are, in a sense, suffering in silence. In essence, suffering in silence. And often I think it's self-inflicted in a lot of ways. And some of the themes of this movie kind of speak on how to deal with that. And I think that's great, right? Because like I said, it's important for these stories to map to reality. And part of a map is giving someone a path or direction to go in, right? And being able to showcase that dilemma, is it yeah, I'd say it's a dilemma that men tend to have, right? And being able to showcase that here, because we're often way less social, uh, a lot of times, in the sense that if you're going through something, you're not necessarily going to tell everyone. And in part, you don't think everyone even wants to know about what you're going through. And also, in part, you think that people won't understand fully what you're going through. So you just go through it alone. There's so many things I've gone through that no one knows about, right? My family won't, my wife even doesn't know about, right? And it's like you just kind of have to go through that, as he said, in silence, right? And yeah, I don't think it has to be that way, but I think that there's work required for you to be in a position in which that is no longer the case. And yeah, it's difficult, but I really love that joke from Jeremy there, because it's so true and hits really hard. Man, that was a really good way of looking at it and a really nice take. And there is that duality to the character here of Spidey that he's talking about, that the movie does deal with, I think, in an excellent manner, an excellent way, that I'll have to speak about again in the spoiler review. But man, it yeah, it does some good stuff here. I'm really excited to watch this movie again, to really sink my teeth into it.
The new threat looms. We have a new Spider-Man movie. How vague is this review gonna be? There's a whole thing in this movie, otherwise known as the plot of the film, that's wrapped in spoilers, so I can't really talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
This is going to be spoiler free. Spoiler talk video will be coming later this week, but until then, here are my very vague Spider-Man thoughts. First of all, right out the gate, Tom Holland is carrying this movie as Peter Parker, as Spider-Man. And he's in the zone, man. He has this down. Every actor has brought their own energy, their own angle, their own thing to the role of Peter Parker. This is a very emotionally weighty, yeah, that works, I'm rolling with it, a story for Peter Parker, and Tom Holland absolutely sells it. It probably helps that he's not going to space, or for the most part dealing with the bigger MCU here. It's very friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here, otherwise known as why people love Spider-Man in the first place. Because that's what this film hits home is, well, it's Spider-Man's life. It's why people connect with Spider-Man. Because we all know deep down there's a difference between the perception of someone and the private weight they actually do carry in their lives. If you feel like you've seen those moments before in Spider-Man, well, you have. In fact, this movie's very close to the inspiration of Raimi's Spider-Man. Spider-Man feels a certain way. His body's manifesting those feelings physically. When he has questions, he goes and talks to an iconic professor of the world. Well, in Spider-Man 2, I guess he went to a random doctor, but later in Spider-Man 3, he went to Dr. Connors. This time around, Bruce Banner. And this movie does run into, are these characters in it for a point, or are they in it specifically in this case so the Hulk can be in here? Little of both, definitely that second one. The first act to first half of this movie, you can argue the entire movie is this, but for me it was the first half or so, is the most Spider-Man feeling Spider-Man film since Raimi's Spider-Man 2. You got villains out there in costumes. There's no real explanation as to how they have their costumes or their outfits. They're out there. I think that's an advantage that the MCU's given Spider-Man, also the PS4 game. Time was, cinematically speaking, you couldn't have a Spider-Man villain just have their costume and be the villain without a good explanation as to how. Granted, Michael Mando was the character in Spider-Man Homecoming, but he wasn't Scorpion yet. Now he's Scorpion. He has the tail. He has the suit. Don't ask how. Don't question it, just go with it. But you do go with it. He's not in the movie that much. He is in the movie far more than Tombstone is. You know what really did work for me in here? Frank Castle and Spider-Man. Dude, they got great chemistry. That is to say, John Byrne.
They really do. And I'll say the reason why their chemistry is so great is the contrast. Contrast. Because of Frank's gruff nature, his, who he is, right? He's just really, really toward one side of the spectrum, and Pete is completely on the other end in a lot of ways, down to the like almost every detail. The fact that Frank uses guns, that Peter does not use any guns, the fact that Frank does not have superpowers, the fact that Peter does have superpowers, the fact that Frank kills first, asks questions later, Peter kills last, right? He doesn't even kill for the most part. But like, there's so many aspects of the characters that contrast significantly, including their main character traits. But one of the things that is able to work so well is the fact that on one hand they do contrast incredibly well, but on the other hand, what works with these two characters in particular is that because of the theme within this film, they're actually able to come together in a way where these characters being within the same story together makes sense. And that comes to a head in a particular scene in this film earlier on, to where I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get why he's here now. And yeah, it does a great job. So again, as I mentioned, whenever it's time to get into spoilers later on in my spoiler review, I'll get into it. But phenomenal job here from that particular pairing.
Bernthal and Tom Holland have great chemistry. It felt like kind of a comic book buddy dynamic at a point, and it works because Frank Castle and Peter Parker have a very different perspective and ideology about criminal and how we deal with them. That works. And as much as there are characters in this movie that aren't in the movie as much as I thought they would be, Frank Castle's actually in the movie more than I thought he'd be. And I'm glad he was. It can be that the characters work because the characters don't feel that they work. And that friction is what makes them work. Yeah, they were great. Give me
the contrast.
An entire Frank Castle Spider-Man team-up film in the future. As much as the emotional moments, like there's a lot of emotional strain with Peter Parker and his friends, or his friends who don't remember they were his friends, but he does. That's the painful part. As much as that does lead to some emotional moments that do hit, I do feel they probably could have trimmed some of that and made this movie closer to 2 hours. 2 hours, 25 minutes. Probably didn't need to be that long. There is a post-credit scene.
There's a theme here. The movie needs to be shorter. And figuring out how to get that there, Jeremy seems to have offered up the best solution, which is cutting out some of those character moments. I think I agree there. I think that there's one scene in particular. They showed a little clip of it there where I think they definitely could have trimmed that down, but I don't know if they could have gained 10 minutes from that, because those scenes with those characters are very few and far between within the movie already, right? So yeah, and I think for what they were going for with the ending, I think they also did need some of that in there. So I don't know, it's a strong candidate for where to cut, but yeah.
Main thing is, it's not a mid-credit scene, it's a post very end of the credit scene. Is it worth the wait? Not if you want to beat traffic. It does feel like an afterthought. Some of the critics in the auditorium, man, they all but boo. I did hear a couple boos. I kind of don't blame them. They could have whipped this thing up yesterday to put in the movie and then sent it out to be on the new digital prints, and that's that. And I believe the reference itself, if I'm seeing it correctly, is really cool. But you would be forgiven if you were like, that put the mid-credit scene. Doesn't really make sense because it is a post-credit scene. What?
Yeah, the post-credit scene does exist. It is there, but it is one of those ones where you will not get it unless you're really in the know. And at that point, it's like, yeah, it's unfortunately you don't get any characters that show up. So because of that, it doesn't hit as well. And there's a lot of piecing things together, figuring them out. But they do signal to something that has been rumored for Doomsday. And I think that's what kind of matters the most there.
Whatever. That's the thing you really do feel in here that I liked, is that Spider-Man is this optimistic, hopeful hero in New York that people love. No Jonah Jameson in this film. It's just all positive, except for the emotional turmoil he's dealing with. But in terms of the public perception, though, some things that didn't really land for me are wrapped up in spoilers, so I can't really talk about them right now. But as for right now, I thought Spider-Man Brand New Day was a fun Spider-Man movie. That vibe of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that I feel this movie does re-inject into Spider-Man's world. It's a little too long, but all in all, I had myself a really good time with Spider-Man Brand New Day. No alcohol required. All right, so Spider-Man Brand New Day. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? You haven't seen it yet, but in a few days, that question won't feel so weird because you might have at that point. Or what's your favorite Spider-Man movie? Or you can rank.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna do one last video here. and then I'll call it a night here in terms of taking a look at some of these reviews. But at least so far, I'm seeing a lot of commonalities with a lot of people's thoughts here as well, which is that the movie is too long and needs to be cut somewhere, but the candidates for where that cut should be happen are still unclear, because the scenes that are included and that are in there are also very good and very tightly woven together that it's really hard to kind of tell where to pluck those scenes from. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that are very spoiler related, right? That a lot of people don't want to spoil, so it makes sense as well. So I'll do my last share here, and this will be from Tyrone himself. All right. In case you haven't heard of Tyrone, get on over to Tyrone's channel here. Tell him Theory of Entertainment sent you there. But yeah, so let's hear what Tyrone has to say. I'm surprised he's seen it this early already. But yeah. If this thing will load, that Doom mask in the background looks really nice.
Woo!
Man, what is going on with this lag? This is super strange. Okay, I'm going to close up some tabs that are not being used. Maybe it's a RAM thing. I think it might be a RAM thing. So I'm just closing up a bunch of tabs here that are open. Yeah, it's already seems to be running a lot smoother. So let's see what happens. It's not cool, man. Not cool. See, if you hit that like button, subscribe, to others, I'll be able to get a better computer to get some better streams going here eventually, right? Because look at this is really, really choppy right now. I don't know what's going on.
All right. We'll tell y'all.
Okay, this is unwatchable in terms of how choppy this is. Super strange. Let me refresh the page.
What is happening, Magnacites? Woo! All right. We'll tell y'all this. This is one of the most emotional Spider-Man movies you will ever see.
Yeah, and what I said earlier about how the highs in this movie, I guess you could say they're lows in a way, right? Because it's something sad that happens. But those peaks and valleys are higher, I would say, in this film than in almost every other Spider-Man movie. I would argue any other one, maybe except for Spider-Man 2. But yeah, the highs and the lows are absolutely incredible in this movie in that regard.
I think a few of you are going to be like, you're not crying, I'm not crying, you're crying. I'm not crying. I wasn't crying. I wasn't crying. Yes, you was, man. I wasn't crying. So, I actually
This will be a good way to end the stream.
went to see this in 4DX. Now, as you all know, ever since the Pandaverse was birthed into Hollywood, and they've been destroying every single IP out there, I decided to stop spending extra money on movies that I was going to see because it wasn't worth it anymore. They were just destroying everything. The majority of the fans were angry. They're losing billions of dollars every year. I was like, why should I spend that much on a 4DX movie when the majority of the time we're going to be disappointed? However, with this movie, I knew there was something in me that just felt that this would be a good time.
Okay, so one thing I want to say specifically about this movie is that you can tell it's great because the expectations for the film are already high. And then with high expectations, it's exceeding or meeting most of them. And that's the case so far across the board here. So yeah, this is a really good one.
And my 4DX money was well spent. Woo! You're going to see some.
So I got this in 3D. I watched it in 3D. I may consider checking out the 40X in terms of what he's talking about. Maybe it'll be better when it comes to the glasses and the visuals. But yeah, I'm curious. Maybe a 40X showing and then a regular showing as well.
Some of the best action you've ever seen in the Spider-Man movie in this movie. Some of the most.
Agreed by far in a lot of cases. The choreography in particular is excellent. Like, oh man, there's so many like freeze frames you can have in this movie of so many amazing shots and sequences. It's absurd.
Most emotion you've ever seen in this movie. I actually do not see any.
Oh, and I do want to comment again. The suit is so crisp and amazing in this movie. I don't think they can do better than this suit right now. It's so good. Like, I don't know like what else you can do here. I think they should just Sam Raimi it, right? Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Just bring the same suit over to the next movie, honestly. Like, it's that perfect.
Spider-Man fan saying that this is a bad movie, a bad superhero movie, a bad Spider-Man movie. I think everybody did their part. All the acting was well done. All the special effects.
Who's saying it's bad? I'll be surprised to hear who's saying it's bad and how they're saying it's bad. There will be people who don't like it. I'm trying to think here. The only argument you can have as to this movie being bad might be the fact that there's too many characters in it that are superheroes that are not Spider-Man. There's maybe too many plot lines happening, and then the twist in the film might cause some issues as well with certain people. But I think that the strengths of the film and the highs, or I guess emotional lows of the film, are I think so strong that they by far outweigh those things. But I'm curious to hear what sort of who doesn't like the movie and who doesn't enjoy it and why. So far, I haven't seen any negative reviews. I might have to do a part 2 stream where I'm kind of looking at some of the more negative reviews. Maybe once I also get into the spoiler reviews, I should probably do something like this as well, where I do a spoiler round and looking at some of the spoiler thoughts to kind of really dissect what people disliked about the film, and specifically taking a look at those people who did not like the movie and why. Because again, I love diving into the nitty gritty of this stuff. Like, specifically, after this stream is done, I only did a couple videos here. In reality, in my personal life, I'm probably gonna listen to 20, 30 more of these, just listening and learning, because like I love studying this stuff. But I wanted to dive into just a few here and doing it live, just so that you guys can see sort of my digestion process in terms of after watching a film and digesting some other reviews that are there, and you can see in real time as I'm sort of forming and reworking some of my thoughts of this film. So far from the videos we've seen and the commentary I've been able to provide here, it's actually, I think, increased my appreciation of the film a little bit more after further investigation. And really, it comes down to those repeat viewings to see where this movie kind of lands. But I think it's really well packed together, really well put together film here. It's doing a lot, very, very well.
Were well done. The direction was well done. I thought the story was good. Now I know when ding, 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 film threat, when they got out and they did their review, they said that it kind of felt like two different movies. I know what they're talking.
I do too. Yeah, definitely. I can see that. And I think what happens is it shifts kind of into another movie, but then I do think it brings it back home. And I think when it makes that shift, the biggest thing is that like the movie really tries to hammer home this overarching theme for the film. And when it shifts into another movie is when it seemingly is losing that theme and veering away from it, right? And then when it ends the film and brings that theme back into play, and you see sort of why and what detour they took, then it kind of completes it. But before that happens, definitely when you're like in the middle of it, you're kind of like, oh, this feels very, very different from what I was watching. There was a certain point where I was like hoping they would get back to that theme and that they wouldn't necessarily let it die off, which they didn't, right? So with that said, I'll let him continue.
Talking about, however, I didn't feel that way when I was watching it. Although I knew, because he said something about after this one part happens, it starts to feel like another movie starts. And I know what they're talking about. And I know what part they're talking about. Now.
See, yeah, I haven't seen the film threat one he's talking about. I might have to go check it out to see what they're discussing. Because, yeah, I don't know what he means here. Honestly, I don't know what they're referring to.
This is a non-spoiler review. All my reviews are non-spoiler. Let's specify. So whenever you see a Tyrone Magnus review, you just know it's going to be non-spoiler. So, but I do hint to certain things.
And I think he does a really good job at hinting to what he's talking about when he does hint to.
There are two characters that people were wondering, were hoping, that were rumored to be in this movie. Those two particular characters do not show up. There is one post-credit scene, which is a nothing burger, kind of. For anybody that's paying attention, it's like, oh, wait a minute. What?
Yeah, it confirms something in a very, very cheeky niche way that most people won't even realize. In the same way that Thanos is seen at the end of Avengers was confirming something that most people didn't realize either.
And I think I know who it's referring to and who it is. But it's nothing big. It's nothing big. It's big, but it's not big, depending on how you're looking at it. That's what she said. But you could skip it and be fine. But
yeah,
as a super Marvel fan or Spider-Man fan, you're going to want to know. I know you're all going to want to know. So check out the post-credit scene. Only one, like I said. Yelena's in this. She's not in this much. I can't stand her. But she's not in the movie much. So that's good. Okay.
Yeah. As someone who enjoyed the Thunderbolts movie, liked her a little bit in Black Widow, and when watching this in particular, I think that it really switches up the flow and feel of the film when she shows up a lot, I think, at least earlier on, right? The first time you see her. But I think that ultimately, given what they were working with and the themes they were introducing, bringing her in made complete sense once you sort of see Spider-Man's arc throughout the film and where he ends up going with things as to why she's in the film in general. There's logistical reasons, but then there's also very light thematic reasons as to why she's there. And yeah, those things I can get to in the spoiler review. But at first I didn't like her introduction, but then once I saw the full picture, I was like, okay, fine, I get it. I see why you brought her in. And again, this is something coming from someone who thoroughly enjoyed Thunderbolts. I do think that, yeah, it was a little bit, okay, yes, we're connected to the MCU. This might be a little too much connection. Because in the previous movies, they'd have maybe tops one Marvel character from the MCU sort of show up, I think. For the most part, it would just be one. And with this one, it's like they have, well, let's say two with Nick Fury and Maria Hill, right? But with this one, it's like they just threw in everybody. So I think that it takes away slightly, but they're able to make it work.
Scorpion. He's in here. He's actually in here a couple of times. But I felt like he was just somebody to beat up when you're watching him in this movie.
Definitely a jobber.
So he's used for something, but, Okay. So, Punisher. They do tone him down, but they keep him who he is because, it's a Spider-Man movie. And we know how deep and dark the Punisher goes. One character alludes to that. one character talks about how dark and messed up Frank is in the head. I thought he was a great addition to the movie.
Agreed.
I've always liked him. John Bernthal plays himself. He plays the Punisher. He plays Shane. Like that character, like even in The Wolf of Wall Street, that character, like that's him. Just, hey, yeah, how you doing? Yeah. You want to tell me why you over here? Yeah, he's like that all the time.
I've only seen him in as the Punisher, so I don't know how he was in Wolf of Wall Street. Like I watched Wolf of Wall Street, but I honestly don't remember him in the film. So yeah, it seems like he's putting on a voice and stuff in the role. So that's why I'm not sure if he's playing himself, how much of himself he's playing. But interesting.
That's him. They used him well in this. I don't think they needed him, but they used him well. You know what I'm saying? Especially at the end, there's something really funny that they do with him. And there's a part in the movie where he's hollering, but I don't think he needed the holler. I mean, he's doing his Rambo, yo. I don't think they needed to do it. It was just funny. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. I noticed that. Yeah. I'm wondering, like, did he do that before in his other appearances in terms of the yelling when he's shooting people? But yeah, man. So it was really good.
Doesn't seem like he needs to be hollering like this. I know it's a grave situation, but the way he's hollering, I figured he'd be mowing through a bunch of men to be hollering like this. But okay, whatever. So, so I think you can probably figure out where all the emotion comes from in the movie. Okay. Peter still is living by himself, fighting crime by himself. Okay. He is unable to talk and speak to Ned and MJ. They have their own lives. And you will see the way the story is told with his relationship with MJ, with his relationship with Ned, and how he's trying to connect with them. You know what I'm saying? That's where you're going to see the emotion in the movie. And for me, it was two parts. The one at the end is I think that's the one that's going to make a bunch of motherfuckers cry. There was just one in the middle of the movie where all the women in the theater at one time were like, oh, all the women.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Oh, man.
Including Scarlo. And I was like, don't count your chickens before they hatch. That's all I'm going to say. I was not moved by this emotional moment. I partially was, but I knew to be on guard and stay on guard. That's all I'll say about that. And I was absolutely.
He better do a spoiler review. This I love it. Because this is one of those movies that you can tell is going to have so many great spoiler reviews that are going to be out there, that are going to be fun to watch and check out, that I'm really, really excited for, to be able to look into, to sink my teeth into and comment on it. What's wonderful about great films is there's tons of things from the film to discuss and to dissect and to learn and to grow from and to pick up. And one of the things that you're going to see with this film in particular is that because of how good it is, there's going to be a lot of things that we can pull from it. And I'm looking forward to hearing, again, what others have to say. I'm having some fun here, even just at this level. But once we get into that spoiler territory and really get down to the nitty gritty of things, oh man, it's going to be wild. I might have like a 4 or 5 hour stream at that point with how much there is to say about this movie, particularly.
Absolutely correct. They incorporate things from the video game in this. Certain takedowns, certain ways he's fighting, the way he's using his webs, the way he's flipping and stuff like that, I recognize them from the video game. They did really good with that. Okay, the web slinging, the web swinging, I love it. Okay, like just certain parts. I mean, he is moving. Okay, the Hulk. You will see two different versions of the Hulk in this movie, just so you know. Okay, the Hulk is great. I know it's a little spoilerish, but put it this way: these certain things have been leaked, but it's me telling you that it's not what you think. It's a swerve. I'm just letting you know. Okay, it's a swerve. All right, me telling you that there are two different versions of the Hulk in this movie. It is a swerve, kind of.
Don't exactly know what he means by that there, but yeah.
And the fighting with the Hulk was good. Banner was good, doing his thing as usual. I know a lot of people have problems with Mark Ruffalo and his politics, but I do really like him as Banner and Hulk. The Hulk, it was great. Okay, it was another thing where I felt like I don't think that Frank or the Hulk was needed in this movie, but they were great additions. You know what I'm saying? They were good additions. I think it still could have been great and used. I think that.
Yeah, and I actually wonder if they were not in the film and you took both of them out, would this be a better film without them? And that's kind of where I'm at and wondering if you took both of them out and their scenes as well, this would trim this movie down probably the 20 minutes it needs, right? But at that point, is it going to be a better film? And for Hulk, maybe. For Frank, definitely not. I think that there are aspects of his character and of the scenes of him in this film that really reinforce the theme that they're going with here, the main theme, that he's a necessary inclusion into the story. Whereas Hulk, I think, is just there for, butts and seats, and then explanations as to how they're going to, take care of certain threats later on inside of the MCU, right? That's basically the gist of why Hulk is there.
Frank or the Hulk, especially the Hulk, could have been, say, swapped out with, say, Rhino or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that they could have done that. Now, Sadie Sink, okay? I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there's a singer that spoiled it for you. But in case you don't know, you shouldn't be reading the comments anyway, because everybody's going to be talking about it, okay? Sadie Sink is in it, and she's very powerful, okay? She comes off one way, but ends up being another way in the movie. And she definitely shows her power.
And I do really, really like how they did that twist towards the end there. I think it was really effective. What I will say to it, and I still have to digest this part, is the characterization of Sadie Sink's character. And yeah, I still don't know how I fully feel about what they did with her in that regard. But I think the twist was definitely welcome in terms of executing really well on the weight of it and the feeling of it, especially the way in which Spider-Man discovers it. Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant.
It's on a particular person's level with what she does at one point to a bunch of people in the movie. Okay, just so you know. All right, I was like, oh, I've seen this before, something similar, and I remember who did it. And this person did it a couple of times in a movie. Oh boy, yeah. So, I'm a very happy Spider-Man fan. I must say it was not better than No Way Home.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Is that I feel like what he's saying here is going to be the overwhelming response from many people in terms of it not being better than the No Way Home. And I haven't watched No Way Home that many times myself to answer that. I will say though that it's quite impactful, and I didn't watch it in a theater. I watched this in a theater, and although impactful, I don't know. Like I said, that aspect of it being greater than the sum of its parts, there's something there about No Way Home that provides that I don't think is provided in the same kind of way in this film. And yeah, I think ultimately that's going to be the verdict where this is going to be right behind No Way Home in terms of the film itself. Personally, though, I do for sure, I think, prefer this one over No Way Home because I do think that it's way richer in its execution and its sophistication, right? I really enjoy that aspect of it, and for those reasons, I would put it above the other. But yeah, there's a certain je ne sais quoi about No Way Home.
I enjoyed No Way Home more. However, people were clapping in the theater just like they were clapping in No Way Home. I would say around just as much. So there may be people that are divided on that, but No Way Home was better to me. Okay. I think I'm going to give this a I'm not sure what I want to give it. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Woo! It was one of the best movies this year. It's right there with, with Project Hail Mary. It's there with Obsession. Okay. It's a great movie. People are going to love this movie. It absolutely stomps the Odyssey. So if you're trying to figure out what you want to spend, what Tom Holland movie you want to spend your money on, if you only got money for one, go see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Okay.
And I would argue the reason why that's the case is the hook in Spider-Man Brand New Day is infinitely better. And what I mean by that hook again is that eye-catching thing that catches your attention. Wow. Eye-catching thing that catches your attention. The thing that catches your attention, right? Those bright, vibrant colors, that sleek, cool action, the drama, those big, larger than life elements, those things are what the hook is for the film. And Spider-Man Brand New Day has a much stronger hook than uh, the Odyssey does. And because of those reasons, I think that it is the better showing. Even though in this case, I would argue that the themes inside of the Odyssey are actually okay. I won't go that far because I haven't seen the film itself fully. But at least from what I've seen from it, it does have some solid enough themes. But I won't get into it. I won't get too deep into it. But what I will say is, I I, I do think that the reason why is the hook for Brand New Day is so good. Like you can rewatch it 2 to 3 times just for the action scenes. That's how good they are. Just for like volume off, dialogue off, just the action scenes, you could rewatch it 2 3 times. That's how excellent that one element of the film is. I don't think you can say the same thing for the Odyssey, except for maybe one particular scene from that film.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, it's a good time. And I'm glad I went to see it in 4DX. Had a damn good time with all the different web slinging and fighting and stuff he was doing. It was great. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything. I don't think.
Okay, so I'm going to end this off here. I do want to check out. He said something about Film Threats review here, and I'm curious as to what he was talking about in terms of how they felt. So I'm going to look up Film Threat and see if there's a Spider-Man Brand New Day review. Yes, there is. So there's a 20-minute one and then the 3-minute one. We're not doing the 20-minute one now. At least I'm not going to do that on the stream. I'll check out this 3-minute one.
Well, Alan, we just got out of.
Well, if it loads on me. But what I'll do here is I'm going to do some of my closing thoughts No, let me do this review and then I'll do my closing thoughts.
Spider-Man Brand New Day. And let me start with that this has the best action ever I've seen on film for Spider-Man. Best action, feels ripped from the comics. Love the action aspect.
Even some first-person perspective.
Yeah, like inspired by the video games. So the action, bar none, best we've ever.
Okay, so you're saying the first person perspective is inspired by the video game. I'm thinking back to the game right now. It's a third person action adventure game. So I don't know exactly what they mean by that. Like in the movie, I know what they mean. There's certain shots where you're inside the mask in a really cool angle that they chose. I think it was a really good angle for being inside of his mask and showcasing the breathing and the sound effects and all of that. And that element, maybe it's in Spider-Man 2, the sequel, but that first Spider-Man game for PS4, I don't remember that kind of stuff where that first person perspective being in that game. And I remember playing through most of it, right? I beat the main campaign and did some DLC. So I don't know what they're referring to there. There is some of that sort of jumping off from rooftop stuff that you get from that game, and the zooming in sort of, in Spider-Man. But yeah, I don't know what they mean by the first person part of it. Because again, it's a third person action adventure game. My favorite genre, by the way. But yeah.
Seen in a Spider-Man movie. But there's major problems. For one, and there'll be no spoilers, it's like there's two movies. There's a movie that goes, that ends, and then there's more movie, like a complete other movie, a different movie. And I just, after a while, I thought, can we just focus on Spider-Man? Way too many side characters that help Spider-Man, including like a cop that he talks to almost constantly that leads him along, almost like a ghost sidekick, and they talk on the phone a lot.
That I can see them taking from the video game. There's a lot of that going on in that game with a different cop as well. Now, some of what I predicted here in terms of people who don't like the film and what they'll bring up, it seems like he's bringing it up as well here. I do think they liked the film, though. So even with their criticisms, I do think they think it's a good movie. But yeah, I mean, I hear them. I think I know what Tyrone was mentioning now. And I also now understand what scene he was talking about in terms of this particular part where the movie ends and then it turns into something else. That I could definitely see, and that definitely adds some runtime, maybe an extra 30 minutes, to be honest, to the movie. But no, I still think that, I still think that it's worth it. It's necessary here. I have 5% on my battery life for the camera, so I'm gonna see if I can wrap this thing up over the next couple minutes here.
That got kind of boring quick for me. So while it's got great action, major story problems that turn me off, and a weird second half of a film. Alan, what do you think?
Well, I kind of liked it, but I feel like I need to see it a second time in order to get my thoughts together. I'll say this. It's true. There are two movies here. And
so I kind of feel like they liked it, but they're so used to not liking Marvel movies at this point that they almost don't want to fully endorse the movie or glaze it until they really have watched a few times and let it settle. I think that's what's happening here with the both of them. Because I do think that if they were to rewatch it here, that their thoughts, I think, could be different, but who knows? We'll see. I have to rewatch it as well, right, to kind of get a better handle on it. Again, it's really hard first time watchings to get, I think, an accurate view of a film just from one viewing.
I think for the most part, I enjoyed the movie. I had fun, but there's a part where that something happens, something is revealed, and that's where the second movie comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally slows the entire movie down. It's like you've got this momentum going, and something happens where you feel like, okay, maybe it's coming to a conclusion, and then it goes on and on. And I think in my mind I had to say, I really like this movie, but when it slows down and when it goes, I have to basically say I can forgive it and then continue to like the movie. I think one thing people will point out is there's a lot of emotion in this movie. You see it in the trailer. This is about Spider-Man on his own, basically the hero with no friends, and that's a big major theme of the first movie. And I kind of liked it. I kind of liked the way it played out. I liked the way it resolved itself. But then again, it just kind of the momentum just slows at the second movie, and it kind of picks up at the end as a superhero movie should, but it never really captures that energy you got. So I'm going to say overall recommendation, but not a perfect movie, and there's a serious flaw in the middle of the movie.
Spider-Man and the too many side quests. That's what I would retitle it.
But think of it as achievement points, like achievement goals.
Like
Okay. Up there. Let me remove this while I still have battery life on this camera here. Okay, so that whole second movie to movie thing is interesting. I do think that I did feel something there in terms of what they're talking about when they do get to that twist and that point that they're referencing. I do see it. It does veer a little bit away from Peter Parker as a character. And I do see what they're saying, but there's a big but here. I do think that because of how they're still able to tie that together with Spider-Man's arc and ultimately with the theme that they're trying to put together within the film, I still think the detour makes sense and it does work out. And I think the film is better for taking that risk. I really do. Although it's great when it's focusing on Peter, I do think that additional wrinkle does take the movie to another level, to a higher extent, and yeah, it plays on a lot of other things that it was setting up throughout the film, to where it makes sense for them to have that additional 30 to 40 minutes detour, as they like to say, right? So I'm interested to getting into this more in the spoiler review. There's a few things here to get into within that spoiler review. I'm really going to mull this through, think it over, take some notes, and really dive in on a more thorough level. This is just, again, high level, looking at the movie, looking at what some of the thoughts are that are out there, helping to kind of reshape my thoughts with some further analysis here, at least. What I can say early off, based off of my initial thoughts of the movie, is that the movie is, in my eyes, a better film than I thought it was, and I already thought it was pretty solid as a movie. I think that really seeing how tightly packed together things are, and how well the narrative spins its web, right? I think that it's really well executed, and again, the the amount of stuff that is usable from this film is, I think, a large pool. It's a really great film for young men in particular, especially in your 20s, right? I think this is a great film for that. And there's some stuff in there as well for men in their 30s, I'd say, as well. Like some really like poignant stuff that makes sense. And as someone who is sort of closer, towards that mid 30s age, I can speak to a lot of those issues and the relevance of them, and the relevance of the themes in particular. But like I said, I can do more of that in my spoiler review as we kind of dive into them. But there's a ton here, and this is going to be a nice, little while here in terms of being able to dive into some of this stuff, because there's a lot of depth here, and I'm excited. Right? We need great superhero movies because we need we need to be able to, you know, have that thing that will look trouble, turmoil, evil right in the eye and be willing to fight back and punch back. We need that element that's in there, that spirit essentially, of this willingness to sacrifice for others despite the insurmountable odds that are in front of us, right? These things are necessary, and it's great to see that Marvel Studios here and Sony as well were able to execute on that well with the Spider-Man movie, and I look forward to exploring it more with you guys. If you guys are interested in that spoiler review, if you guys are interested in the other stuff that I'm going to be taking care of as well in regards to talking about this movie, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm your man Lex. This has been Theory of Entertainment, and I am out. Catch you guys in the next video. Peace.